I gotta tell you guys, it's a lot different doing these rewatches for the Disney Plus shows compared to the movies. I mean, yeah, it's the same Marvel content, except now it's 6 hours long. I mean, can you imagine if Disney Plus actually made, I don't know, 15 to 22 episode long seasons? Or if their shows were, I don't know, maybe 40 to 60-minute episodes? Crazy, right? Welcome back to Access Blockbusters, and today we are looking back at the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the second project to be released in Marvel's Phase 4, only a couple months after the release of WandaVision. But first, before we get any further, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel if you like this kind of content. Give this video a like, and let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and what are you most looking forward to as I go back and rewatch all of the projects from Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So today we are going to be revisiting the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, like I do with my WandaVision series and like I did with my Star Wars Reexamined series, what we're going to do in these videos is go through these shows and movies in 3 parts. First part is the background. How I came into these projects when I first watched them, what was going on at the time, how people were anticipating or maybe not anticipating the show or the movie. We'll talk about all of that to give some context, and then we'll kind of go, not play by play, but we'll go through the show, talk about some of the things I liked and didn't like as we go through the progression of the story, and finally wrap up with how my thoughts might have changed, or maybe didn't change, after I watched this show again. And like I said with WandaVision, and like I said with the Star Wars Reexamined series, I think a lot of these movies and shows really benefit from another watch, especially another watch after it's been a little bit of time, and especially with these Disney Plus shows, I haven't had a chance to just really watch them all the way through again because, let's face it, they're longer. Can't just pop it on for an hour and a half and then shut it off. It's, what, 4, 5, 6 hours of content, so it takes a little bit longer, but you know what? Sometimes it's worth it. Was it worth it for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Let's talk about it. So coming off the high of WandaVision, we were all looking forward to the next installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and luckily we didn't have to wait for long. In phases 1, 2, and 3, the most that Marvel would release in a year was 3 movies. But after over a year hiatus due to the pandemic, Marvel was coming back and they were coming back in full force. Not only were we getting these Disney Plus series that were longer than the traditional MCU movies, but we were getting them in rapid succession. So literally, I think not even a month after WandaVision had aired its finale, we were getting the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in March of 2021. And the trailers look good. You can go back and watch some of my older videos where I rank the most anticipated Phase 4 and Phase 5 MCU projects, especially the ones in 2021. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was fairly high up there, and it was all because of the trailers. The trailers promised a lot of great MCU action, and it looked really, well, it looked like it was in the vein of Captain America the Winter Soldier, dare I say that. And, I mean, I wasn't expecting a ton from the Falcon and Winter Soldier, just given the nature of the show. It wasn't going to be the zany comedy drama like WandaVision. It wasn't going to be this time-bending adventure like Loki. It looked like it was going to be a standard action comedy drama that we'd come to expect from Marvel. And that's all I really needed, because Falcon and Winter Soldier were not 2 of my all-time favorite characters. I enjoyed them in the Captain America films and the Avengers films, but really had no major attachment to them at all. So when I watched the Falcon and Winter Soldier for the first time, I liked it. I had some problems with it, and I think that those problems became accentuated more and more as time went on, to the point that as more and more MCU projects came out in Phase 4, the lower and lower and lower it got on my list until, I don't know, for some reason, it just appeared at the bottom of my list. Every time I re-ranked the MCU in my own head, or every time I re-ranked the MCU on a notes app or whatever, it was always just at the bottom for some reason. Because I didn't remember liking it that much, even though when I look back on those videos, and you can go back on the channel, I reviewed each and every individual episode. I did enjoy a lot of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier at the time. So was it really that Phase 4 had gotten that much better? I don't think so. Was it really that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier had aged poorly? I wasn't quite sure. And so that's why we're here to do this rewatch. So let's go through and talk about what I thought on the second time around. So we open the show on some dramatic thematic elements. Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of Captain America. And that is the strength of the show, first of all. It's that it understands that the real driving force of what this show is going to be is the idea of a black man taking up the mantle of Captain America, a moniker, the red, white, and blue, that had, let's be honest, been basically associated with white people. And given the racial injustice and prejudice and discrimination in society, I think it was a bold yet nuanced and necessary move to make the show about Sam Wilson as a black man taking up the mantle of Captain America to embody what it meant to be an American. So while a lot of people thought the idea of why did Sam give up the shield, and this is really called out in the show itself, a lot of people question, especially Bucky, they ask him, why did you give up the shield? I think that the criticism might be, so Steve gives him the shield, he doesn't want the shield, then he gets the shield at the end, and what changes? But it's not about the plot in that sense, it's about the character progression of Sam Wilson and the thematic element, so that is a great start. And then the MCU action at the beginning is fantastic. That canyon fight scene is what I thought would be a precursor to some great phenomenal visual action that was to come in the show. And there is some good action in the show for sure. But I think the show kind of peaked in the first episode. I think it wanted to show the audience that, hey, look, we're an MCU Disney Plus show, but we're not going to pull our punches. Well, mission accomplished, but then what have you got for the rest of the show? Okay, so you're establishing the narrative stakes. You're establishing that Sam doesn't want the shield, and then the government gives the shield to John Walker, and then you have Bucky, who has heard about this and also dealing with his own PTSD. So there's already a lot going on in the show, right? First thing I want to point out that didn't click with me is the way that Sam and Bucky meet. It feels very coincidental. It's one of those things where, and I'll talk about this later in another MCU project, try to guess what that one is actually based on what I'm about to say. Hey, I'm upset about this thing. By the way, can I go on this dangerous mission with you for no apparent reason? Bucky's just basically like, I'm going with you, and Sam's like, why? And the Bucky's like, because, and then Sam's like, okay, and that's how the two are paired up in the show. I guess that's one way to do it. And it's really from episode 2 that the show starts to become a little bit of a narrative mess. And I would go as far to say that the show borders on a narrative disaster. Now, I understand that there were some dropped subplots due to the pandemic. I know that there was a whole vaccine subplot that for whatever reason the creators just felt wasn't right for the show. That's okay, but the show never really quite finds its narrative footing after the first couple episodes. And after episode 1, the show becomes a series of great moments mixed in with a lot of confusion, a lot of mediocrity, a lot of things that I didn't personally like, and that just doesn't make for great television. Going back to Sam and Bucky really quickly, I think that their chemistry is fine. I think that the two of them are enjoyable enough to watch on screen, but one of the things that I'll say is that they feel very MCU in a certain sense. A lot of their dialogue is just banter that fits the Joss Whedon sort of mold of the MCU, and I wasn't really a big fan of that. They have some serious conversations later on, but even those conversations feel a little heavy-handed, like in episode 5 when Sam and Bucky are talking about the shield. But anyways, at the end of episode 1 and towards the beginning of episode 2, we're introduced to the Flag Smashers, who are the villains of the show. Now, again, if you go rewatch the videos I made about each individual episode, you'll know that I really, really, really hated Karli Morgenthau as a character in the Falcon and Winter Soldier the first time around. And that did not change. I think that the portrayal of this character as depicted in the writing and the way that Karli Morgenthau was played by Erin Kellyman, who, again, I am not trying to say that Erin Kellyman is a bad actress. I'm just trying to say that whatever direction she was given was so stale and one note, and the character was written so poorly, because maybe I kind of understand this idea of extremism. That's one of the themes in this show, I feel like. Trying to humanize other people to talk to them and not to villainize them unnecessarily. But on the other hand, then you have Karli Morgenthau blowing up a building of innocent people, and even one of her Flag Smashers is like, hey, what'd you do that for? And she's like, oh, well, we gotta do what we gotta do. And it's just these weird decisions like that that make me really question her as a character, and at the end of the day, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. On top of that, you have Sharon Carter, who's entering back in the picture. Can you tell there's a lot going on? I'm not going to talk about each individual subplot in detail, but Sharon Carter coming back and then sort of being an ally, and then being revealed to be the power broker at the end, and not having any of that explored is just, it's confusing and it doesn't make sense. So going back to the narrative messiness, that's another part of it as well. However, one character whose subplot I really did enjoy actually this time around, and I think I enjoyed the first time too, was John Walker. Now, John Walker is a character you're meant to hate, and I hate the character of John Walker, but I think that's intentional, so I think that's the credit actually to the writers. But at the same time, you understand where he's coming from. He feels the pressure to take on this mantle. He feels pressured at the same time, and he's also just a prick. And so this slow descent into madness is actually one of the most character-driven story arcs that I've seen in the MCU, and it's quite fascinating, actually. And it climaxes at the end of episode 4, obviously, with that iconic shot of John Walker holding the bloody shield, and towards the beginning of episode 5 as well, where Sam and Bucky take the shield from him. I think up until the beginning of episode 5, John Walker has one of the strongest character arcs in the entire MCU. That being said, when he comes back in episode 6, it's really random. He has this makeshift shield, and then he becomes a hero at the end, and then he becomes US agent. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And I guess I should talk about Zemo as well. So let's round out all of these other characters that I have to talk about with Zemo, who I think didn't need to be in this show at all. Is that a controversial opinion? I have no idea. And I'm one of those people who really like Zemo. I didn't think he was absolutely necessary in Captain America Civil War, but I enjoy Daniel Bruhl's performance as Zemo quite a lot. And I thought this was a great place to put Zemo in, at least according to the concept. As I watched the show, though, it became incredibly evident to me that Zemo's just another character, just like the Winter Soldier, that's along for this ride, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. He really serves no narrative purpose other than to just have his own agenda. It would have made a lot more sense rather than having Sam and Bucky try to recruit him. Instead, having him come in as a rogue agent trying to stop all these super soldiers from running around. That makes a lot more sense. And then the Dora Milaje come in and they're trying to get Zemo. There's a lot going on in the show, and not a lot of it really coheres together really well. But again, like I mentioned, this show has some great moments. As I said before, the moment at the end of episode 4 and the whole fight that leads up to it is fantastic because it's building stakes, it's building tension, and that shot where John Walker is holding the bloody shield is one of the single most haunting, dramatic, tense, stakes-driven, character-driven shots of the entire MCU. Every single conversation as well that Sam has with Isaiah Bradley is phenomenal. That feels like what the show was really trying to be. All the discussions about the African-American super soldiers and the Black Captain America and whether or not society would accept a Black Captain America is fantastic. That's why it's hard to kind of look at this series, because when I look back, I remember a lot of these strong scenes, but then I also remember disliking a lot of elements, so it all becomes a sort of muddle in my mind. And as I talk through all these character arcs, I realize, again, that there really isn't a story there. I mean, it's Sam and Bucky trying to uncover this conspiracy with the Flag Smashers, and the Flag Smashers, in the end, try to disrupt the GRC meeting in New York, and that's it. That's really the basic plot, because that's not that interesting. What's interesting is Sam struggling to become Captain America, which is about 30-40% of the show, but it should have been 80-90% of the show. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure where Bucky fits in that. I mean, he has his own struggles with his PTSD, and that's all great. Another wonderful scene, by the way, is Bucky in Wakanda. That flashback is fantastic. But at the end of the day, when I finish the show, just not a lot of it feels like it meshes well. It could have been the pandemic for sure, but a lot of it also just feels like some great ideas that didn't click together. I will say, though, just to round out this video on a positive note, that I do think the finale, I didn't give it enough credit before, because I'm so used to these Disney Plus MCU finales being so lackluster. You have Loki, in my opinion. I didn't remember, Miss Marvel or Moon Knight's finales being particularly interesting. She-Hulk's finale wasn't particularly satisfying, even though it was interesting. So to have a finale here that feels really satisfying for the show, I think is actually a step up. I didn't remember the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier being that coherent and clear. And to be honest, if all the episodes were as crisp as the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I would have been quite happy, because the finale sees some great action, Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of Captain America. Other than the John Walker part, you have Sam's speech at the end to the senators. It wraps up what this show could be, and the ending as well, with Sam taking Isaiah and Eli to the Smithsonian to see their exhibit. It's really one of the most emotional endings to an MCU project, I guess, ever. So, as you can tell, I'm a little conflicted about how to feel about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because while it has always ranked very low in my rankings of the MCU, I still probably will rank it fairly low based on how I thought about this rewatch, I have to say, transitioning to the third part of the video, that I did like this show a bit more than I liked it the first time. Because the hard part about this show is there's a lot to like. It's not one of those shows where I can just rail on it and say this is the worst thing that the MCU has ever produced. This is just terrible. This is awful filmmaking, awful writing. There are some moments, absolutely, and there are some characters, absolutely, that have just bizarre subplots. But there are also some great moments as well. And so maybe that's what's frustrating about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is that I felt like it could have been better. Man, at the end of the day, maybe that's one of the worst things I could say, right? I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. So what did you guys think of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, either the first time you saw it or maybe even the second, third time on your rewatches? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoy this kind of video, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, check out the WandaVision re-examination that I did just a little bit ago, and hopefully you guys are enjoying this video. More to come from Phase 4. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, give this video a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.